Thank you very much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. Welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and across the world. And as always, do well to leave a comment in the YouTube comment section if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're watching us online, simply tweet at News Central TV. I am Osalgi Ogbawa.
It feels good to be here on a Monday morning as we start off a brand new working week, especially for those who will be heading to work this morning and those who are watching us while you are in your cars, at your offices already, and those who are at home getting the kids ready for work, while those who will be working from home who have quickly tied in to ensure that you do not miss a single thing from all the very interesting and I can say very heart and thought-provoking stories that indeed passed by through the weekend, and we're going to talk about them today. My name is Joe Hansen, by the way, and I'm reporting for duty. Welcome to Breakfast Central. Now, one of the biggest stories from the weekend, out of the top three that I'll be looking at, has to be one that you could say is heart-wrenching. It had to do with what Nigerians are seemingly used to these days. When a tanker decides to capsize or fall over, it is only normal in saner climes that you would find out that residents or people who live close by would do all they can to evacuate that particular area. But in this case, it wasn't the same. Rather, we did see a lot of persons go straight to scoop fuel from a falling tanker. Yesterday, we did have the team of Breakfast Extra cover this story live. And guess what? It was indeed a very sad situation because many lives were lost, Osaruge.
Yeah, sadly, I think the death toll now is about 70 or more than 70 people that have been reported dead from this particular incident. Very, very sad, but it also just tells you a couple of things, that Nigerians really haven't learned a lot of lessons, over time, because this is not the first time. We remember very well very many of such incidents that have happened in Nigeria, not just even from tanker fire itself, even from bus pipelines in the Niger Delta. If you remember the Jesse fire incident, many years ago, Nigerians have not really learned these lessons hard enough and are still willing to risk their lives. But the reason, it's difficult for them to learn the lessons, from scooping petrol from a tanker is because of poverty, I believe, or there's still something inherently wrong with the mindset of the average Nigerian, that when a tanker or a truck capsizes on the road, your very first instinct is not to protect the goods that have, that are now on the roadside. The very first instinct that, many Nigerians have is to go and grab and take what they can and run away. And that is one of the reasons that we're seeing this today, plus the fact that there's still an extremely high level of poverty in many Nigerian cities across the country. And this is unfortunately in Niger State. Nobody needed to die here. There's other, questions that would be asked as to why the tanker, capsized. What exactly? Was it bad roads? Was it overspeeding? Is there something else that we're not being told? That maybe investigations would show later. But the key point here is nobody needed to die. None of these lives needed to be lost if we simply had a seemingly sane society where people realize how flammable petrol is, and the very first instinct that you have should not be to rush towards this tanker and see what how much petrol you can scoop for yourself. It is completely insane, completely insane. I can't imagine what type of mentality will push a person to risk their lives like that.
You see, I always say this, and I'm going to say it here, that if you give Nigerians an opportunity, I think Nigerians, not all of Nigerians, please, let me make it clear, but a higher percentage of Nigerians would rather want to engage in Squid Game. If you put a Squid Game here in Nigeria, Nigerians will rush. Even if you tell them that you will lose your lives, they will say, let us go. It doesn't matter. This is a clear indication. Now, guess what? I was thinking that just 2 weeks ago, while on the news, we had a similar incident. It was a tanker explosion in Agbo, in Delta State. And we saw the lives of persons that were lost. People lost their lives at Agbo. I do recall a family who, when I saw that video, when I saw that image, when our reporter was there, Austin Azu, I couldn't help but feel the pain in my heart where the husband had lost his wife and he was seated with the children Of course, the governor did come to commiserate and, to condole him, I beg your pardon. But it's more than that. You would think that after that happened, Nigerians would have said, oh, let's learn a lesson from that. But look at the numbers.
Even if it happens every week, there won't be lessons. But we should also point out the institutional failure here. Because,
absolutely.
Again, in countries that actually work, when you hear of incidents like this, when they happen, the very first thing that happens is very likely there's a police patrol vehicle close by that comes to cordon off the area and chase people away, ensure that lives are protected, get the driver out of the vehicle, ensure that every other person stays away, calls in, the fire service to ensure that they also arrive in time. People then even start to calculate how many minutes it took for fire, trucks to arrive at the scene, and they praise themselves for efficiency like that, oh, it only took 5 minutes. It only took 10 minutes for the fire, team to arrive at the accident site. That's what you would expect in, sane societies. But we don't have that level of infrastructure here. And when we're talking about police reforms, it's not simply, oh, you need to pay them more, you need to give them more money, you need to buy them bigger guns. It is a combination of all these things. And if we had at least 50%, of these things, then maybe these lives would not have been lost. If we had police presence, if we had fire service immediately there 5 minutes later, in that area, now I don't know that you can vouch that there is a fire truck readily available around this area where this thing happened that will be there in 15 minutes if there was an emergency. I don't know that anybody can vouch, for that. So it's a systemic failure that has also, of course, once again led to the loss of lives.
It is. You see, if we're given time to talk about this particular story, we could go on and on and on. And we can tell you that there's also the case of the drivers not having orientation. There's also a case of the drivers who are tired, but they have to complete a long trip because they are sleepy and so on. Because why would a tanker just tumble over? There's also a case of the tankers stopping by at different areas before they get to the destination. And I do hear from if you deal with those who do have filling stations, most times when the tankers arrive, they say that the fuel they get is not the exact number because the tankers stop by on the roadside, open some of the spaces, and then sell before they even get to their destination. What about the expiry dates of some of these tankers? We're not even talking about that. Who is the regulator that should regulate these tankers and ensure that they don't get on the road just like that? So anyway, this conversation is one that we would continue later. Let's go to another story that happened over the weekend. Sorry, I don't know if you have your tank filled up. Fuel queues are indeed starting to come back again. Prices exceed 1,000 naira. We do hear some places in Abuja it's 1,050 naira, 1,150. And the reason is because they say the price of crude globally has gone up, Brent and so on. So therefore, it's also going to impact on the cost of fuel. Dangote has reviewed his prices upwards. I saw a press release this morning. It said MRS and the likes of other filling stations would be selling for 970 naira per litre, as regards to 930 or 925 that they were selling before.
Yeah. I bought yesterday at 1,023 naira, 1,025.
Wow.
Yesterday. And I mean, for me, really, I think at this point, it is just punishment. And it's somebody's decision to really just punish Nigerians because there's not that much difference between 1,030 and 1,070 or 1,100. It's not a significant, increment. And so, if Nigerians have already accepted that the price of petrol is going to be above 950 naira, 970, 980, 981, whatever the figure is, you might as well just make it available. The scarcity, whatever it is that is causing the scarcity, I'm not very sure. But please just make it available. There's no need playing these games, and trying to, play whatever tactics that you can play before you increase the price. If you want to make it 1,500, go ahead and make it 1,500. If you want to make it 2,000 naira per litre, go ahead and make it. At this point, Nigerians do not have the strength or the mental capacity to even argue or to even demand, for anything different. They can't demand for a reduction in the price of petrol. They can't demand for an improvement in the petroleum sector generally. So whatever the government chooses to do, and these oil marketers, petroleum marketers choose to do, they may as well just go ahead and do it. Make it available, because that's really what, the stress really is not just the price, it's availability. So make it available. Nigerians will buy it. They will adjust. They've been adjusting for so long. They adjusted from when the petrol was 187 naira to now that it is 1,000 naira. So you might as well just make it available. They would buy it. What will simply happen is that the price of goods and services will increase. Food prices will increase as well. And then the government will, once again tell itself that it's looking forward to a 15% inflation in 2025, which is completely insane. So make it available.
You forgot to add and then give 70,000 naira to...
Oh, of course. And share bags of rice to SUG presidents. And bread.
Bread, fresh bread.
So just make it available. Nobody at this point is demanding, for 200 naira per liter anymore. Those who told Nigerians that once Dangote refinery starts working, the price of petrol will come down. Market forces will slap each other here and there, and the price of petrol will come down. All those people now, I hope that they're seeing that these things, they seemingly were all lies. So make it available, Nigerians will buy. Make it 5,000 naira a liter, Nigerians would buy. Just before we go, I think we could quickly also just talk about the case, the EFCC case in Anambra State, that happened on the 17th, where, of course, the EFCC took about 48 hours before it eventually put out a statement explaining that their officer, or their officers rather, had gone on a raid. They stylishly called it in the early hours of the 17th of January. And in a very, very sad incident, a turn of events, one of the officers was shot, was killed in the line of duty. The second one was reportedly in the hospital, sustaining injuries as well. Nigerians, of course, reacted very, very bitterly to this incident, but not bitterly to the incident, with sympathy for the EFCC, unfortunately, but instead, bitterly because, once again, we're back to that same conversation about the standard operating procedures for some of these agencies. The spokesperson for the EFCC put out a long statement saying that they had gone on that raid and that the suspect, seeing the officers through his CCTV cameras, then opened fire on their officers. They went on to say that they found laptops and iPads and recording devices in the suspect's, apartment, and that also they, of course, have strong reason to believe that he was involved in internet, fraud. He was an internet fraudster. He was involved in coding and medical supplies of questionable legitimacy, as they said in the statement. But if you look at the reaction that many people have, again, it really just tells you that a vast majority of Nigerians have lost faith and lost trust in the EFCC as an agency. And that's why they're not getting any sympathy from a vast number of Nigerians. And another thing is, everyone should remember that Ola Olukoyede, the EFCC chairman, had banned these nighttime raids in 2023. On the 1st of November, there was a statement put out by the EFCC banning nighttime raids by the EFCC. So stylishly calling it early hours of the 17th doesn't, change the fact that this very likely happened when it was still dark. It was, reportedly by 3 or 4 a.m. that night. And so the FCC needs to also take responsibility for the loss of its officer. Yes, this person, the courts will determine, or the FCC investigation will determine whether he truly was an internet fraudster or not. He would have to defend himself in court, no doubt. But the standard operating procedures of the EFCC, and when we're talking about reforms in our security agencies, reforms in Nigeria's institutions generally, these are some of the things that we're talking about. Did the EFCC's officers need to be in anybody's house by 4 a.m. or by 3 a.m.? Did they need to be there at night, even after there was a ban placed on nighttime raids? Only the FCC will be able to answer.
Only them, because there are many questions. They've said that before. While this was going on, a lot of persons have said, listen, you don't need to go through this method, this means. There's a simple way of inviting someone to the station. And even if you have to, we've seen videos where EFCC officers usually go to blocks of flats where you have these young internet fraudsters in quotes living during the daytime. But it seems like they believe that nighttime happens to be the best when these guys are busy working or when people are sleeping. And we know that it's quite synonymous when you link anybody who comes to your house at night to what? To a criminal, to an armed robber. An armed robber never operates daytime. He or she would operate at night. But anyway, these are conversations I would like to have, and we'll continue to have them in the course of this entire stretch of 2 hours straight here on Breakfast Central. We're going to do this to take a look at the top stories that we have for you today, this morning, and then we go straight to the breakfast headlines. This morning on Breakfast Central, Nigerian government destroys lives. Kemi Badenoch fires fresh shot. That's what we see there. A new sect linked to human trafficking emerges in Plateau State. A big conversation that we're going to have today. And Trump to be inaugurated as 47th United States of America president. Wives of personnel trained on protocol and emotional intelligence. We'll also have that story, and not forgetting to the newspaper front pages here on News Central Television, here on Breakfast Central. But first, let's bring to you breakfast headlines.
We begin the news in West Africa, Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu will set up a high-powered committee to investigate the reoccurrence of tanker explosions and implement safety measures to forestall these tragedies. The Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, stated this on Sunday at the palace of the Emir of Suleja, where he visited to commiserate with the victims of Saturday's tanker explosion in Diko Junction in the Gurara local government area of Niger State. He said members of the committee would be drawn from the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, Tanker Drivers Association, and other stakeholders. The minister also said enlightenment campaigns on the safe movement of fuel tankers, road safety habits, and the dangers of scooping leaked fuel will be carried out by his ministry. Now, following the tanker explosion at Diko Junction, Gurara local government area of Niger State on Saturday, the Niger State Emergency Management Agency has put the number of deaths from the incident at 86. According to a press statement issued by NSEMA Director General Abdullahi Baba Ara, the remains of the disease were recovered and buried in coordinated effort by Nsema, Gurara local government authorities and volunteers. Of the deceased, 80 were buried in a mass grave at the Diko Primary Healthcare premises. 5 others were handed over to their families for burial within the town, and 1 individual succumbed to injuries at the Diko Primary Healthcare Center. The mass burial, a somber and challenging task, took place between 5 p.m. and midnight, involving brave and compassionate volunteers who worked tirelessly to ensure the proper handling of the victims. Now, talking politics, the ruling All Progressives Congress has won 16 out of the 18 local government chairmanship seats, in the local government elections in Ondo State. The chairman of the Ondo State Independent Electoral Commission, Joseph Aimo, declared this at the headquarters of the commission in Akure on Sunday. He noted that while the rescheduled election is being held in Ondo West local government area, results are being expected from Owo local government area. Only 12 political parties contested for the chairmanship and councillorship offices in the elections held on Saturday. Ahead of the poll, the People's Democratic Party announced its decision to withdraw from the election, saying it does not believe in the Ondo State Independent Electoral Commission to conduct a credible election. And also in the news, gunmen have shot and killed a 54-year-old prophet during an active Sunday service at the Celestial Church of Christ, Igu Parish in the Odoira, Idiroko area of Ogun State before fleeing the scene. Police spokesperson Omolola Odutola confirmed the incident in a statement issued in Abeokuta on Sunday. She said on January 19, 2025, around 10:30 a.m., the divisional police officer of Idiroko received a report of a killing at a Celestial Church along the Old Baggage Road, Odoira, Idiroko. According to Odutola, when officers arrived, they found the victim, Yomi Adetula, lying face up in a pool of blood that stained his white celestial garment. She also confirmed that upon closer inspection, the body was found to be riddled with bullets and his head was severely damaged with an axe to verify that he was indeed dead. And now in East Africa's Tanzania, the ruling party has nominated President Samia Suluhu Hassan as its candidate in general elections due to take place in October in the East African country. Hassan took office in 2021 after the sudden death of her authoritarian predecessor, John Magufuli. Her party, Chama Cha Mapinduzi, held a general assembly over the weekend, at the end of which it said it had named her as its sole candidate for the October poll. Now, after taking power, Hassan was initially feted for easing restrictions that Magufuli had imposed on the opposition and the media in the country of around 67 million people. But rights groups and Western governments have criticized what they see as renewed repression, with the arrest of Chadema party politicians, as well as abductions and murders of opposition figures. And finally, in North Africa, Tunisians have rallied in the capital Tunis, demanding the release of opposition leader Abir Moussi, head of the Free Destorian Party. Moussi was arrested on October 3, 2023, outside the Carthage Palace while attempting to deliver a legal request to the Presidential Registry Office. Protester Thamil Saad condemned her detention, saying that it was not worthy of a country that claims to be democratic. Moussi was charged with making statements that allegedly undermined the integrity of the Independent High Authority for Elections, following her criticism of the election process, which was ultimately not held. Saad and other protesters argue that Moussi's arrest reflects a broader failure to uphold democratic values in Tunisia. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Let's now move back to Breakfast Central and get into our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
Welcome back. Wives of serving military personnel in Nigeria have been tasked to display a high sense of respect and regimentation reflective of the ranks of their husbands in their everyday activities. This was during a training on protocol and emotional intelligence organized by the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association in Abuja, where they urged the women to be models of good conduct. Our correspondent Amadine Uyi reports.
Another person's feelings.
The training had in attendance women married to personnel from across several ranks in the nation's armed forces and the Nigeria Police Force. The training, organized by the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, seeks to build the capacity of women to enable them meet the high expectations required as wives and spouses of personnel serving in the nation's armed forces.
How do you recognize your emotion? How does emotion show up in your body? And then when you recognize the emotion, how do you understand what that emotion is all about? And then how do you manage your emotions?
Protocol is that officers salute and respect the rank higher than their rank. The women should imbibe this culture as it will help to ensure order in the relationship among women.
The women were also tasked to meeting regimentation requirements expected of their husbands in their everyday relations with one another.
The military community thrives in a disciplined environment. Hierarchy, rank, and seniority are never downplayed because they are essential anchors of our social organization. Junior military wives should respect senior military wives, while senior military wives, I want to stress this, while senior military wives should show love to junior military wives and guide, mentor them.
The wife of the Chief of Defense Staff says that the training is essential to keeping the women out of trouble and maintaining their self-dignity.
The armed forces is about orderliness and protocol. And if you know the order, if you know what to do, how to relate, and who to address at different times, it will help you more, and you know where you are meant to be at a particular time, and you will not infringe in anybody's right. You will not get people angry. Also, you will not get yourself into trouble.
The Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association also tasked the women to stand by each other and ensure that they are good examples in good conduct to the public. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
And to include all the
Thanks to Amadine Uyi for that report. Now, after a series of calling out the negative aspects of living in Nigeria, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the UK's Conservative Party, has continued to speak. She recently expressed concerns about the potential impact of ineffective governance in the UK, drawing a comparison to not another African country, but again to Nigeria. During her first speech of the year, where she focused on economic and social research, she said, and I quote, "I grew up in a poor country and watched my relatively wealthy family become poorer and poorer."
And why does this matter so much to me? It's because I know what it is like to have something and then to lose it. And I don't want Britain to lose what it has. I grew up in a poor country, and I watched my relatively wealthy family become poorer and poorer and poorer, despite working harder and harder as their money disappeared with inflation. I came back to the UK, age 16, with my father's last £100 in the hope of a better life. So I have lived with the consequences of terrible governments that destroy lives, and I never, ever want that to happen here.
Well, you would recall that the Vice-President Kashim Shettima recently rebuked Badenoch, accusing her of constantly denigrating Nigeria. After these recent statements were made, Nigerians are asking if she has had a personal encounter or vendetta with her country of origin. For how long will the Conservative frontman continue to marketing Nigeria in comparison to the UK? Well, let's speak with our guest this morning, who closely monitored this speech and reactions that followed. Joining us now is Nathaniel Ogunniyi, a political analyst out there in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much, Nathaniel, for your time, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Can you share with us what, let's say, Nigerians in the diaspora are saying, reacting to how Kemi Badenoch has been consistently, in the words of the Vice President, demarcating, denigrating Nigeria, especially in every single part of her speech? Do you think it's a coincidence, or it's just a way of pushing through the ranks, ensuring that she continues in her quest to make Nigerians feel like they're really not getting the best in governance?
So I think the focus of her remarks was the history of the Conservative Party. The focus of her remarks was about Brexit and the decisions made around that. The focus of her remarks were the decision to pursue a net zero by 2050. And so these comments were not sort of the main thrust of her speech. They weren't the main focus. But it is a theme, and she has made these points before. I think a lot of people have had some sympathy with the comments that she's made, because broadly speaking, they've had similar experiences. So she talks about inflation, for instance. That is something that we've had as a recurring economic problem, both in the UK but also in Nigeria. So when she talks about that, I think a lot of people can relate. Equally, when she talks about the police or she talks about ineffective governance, I think she makes comments that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, they can relate, yes, but do they, completely agree with her? And, a lot of Nigerians in the UK, would you say that they stand with, what she's saying?
Yeah, so it's a mixed bag, but the majority do. The majority recognize the points that she's making, even if they wish that she wasn't making them, right? I think the majority of people recognize that what she's saying is accurate, what she's saying is true. When she's spoken about ineffective governance, when she's spoken about corruption, when she's spoken about military dictatorships, these are things that we all document as fact. These are things that we all know to have taken place. And so even though some of us may wish not to talk about them, I think most people have some sympathy and recognize the truth in her remarks.
Okay, I also, want to talk about, the truth in her remarks that you mentioned. There's people who, describe her statements, as seemingly her positioning herself, to be more appealing, to those in the UK, and we're talking about now those in the Labour Party and other parties, the white nationalists in the UK. Is there any truth to that? Can she carry on as leader of the Conservative Party without mentioning Nigeria every 2 weeks? Or is that important, for her run?
So I think generally political leaders will speak about their past. So, for instance, the last leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, talked a lot about growing up in Southampton. His father was a doctor. I think his mother was a pharmacist. It was actually one time that they staged a political visit to the area around where he grew up, and to the shop that his parents used to run. And so, generally speaking, political leaders will talk about their backgrounds. If you look at the transcript of the speeches made by Sir Keir Starmer, particularly while he was in opposition, he talks a lot about his father being a toolmaker. His mother was ill for some time while he was young. His father was a toolmaker. He grew up in Surrey. These are all details we know because, generally speaking, political leaders will talk about their backgrounds. And it's about how you connect with the population. It's about how you connect with people, right? You talk about what you've been through. You talk about how you've grown up and how that has shaped your outlook. And so I think she's following in the footsteps of political leaders who have come before her.
All right. I mean, ever since she was elected as the Conservative leader last year in November, up until now, how would you say the people, especially those under the Conservative Party, are really looking at her position, especially her performances so far? Do you think she's quite impactful, or do you think she's pulling her weight too much?
So I think she's done a good job, and that's reflected in the Conservative Party membership. So if you look back at the election in July, the Conservative Party were, 10 points behind Labour. Now, according to a poll that was conducted just last week, the Conservative Party are actually 1 point ahead, right? And that's one poll of many. We have a number of years to go to a general election, but the effort that she has made in terms of diagnosing the problems through the speech she made last week, I think has had some cut through. It's meant that people have sat up and listened. She's talked a lot about principles. So she opened both her Conservative Party conference speech and her speech last week with the words, "It's time to tell the truth." And that sort of truth, principles-based, honest approach, I think has meant that she's gotten a lot more media attention and a lot more credibility with the average voter than she otherwise would have.
And I mean, what would your reaction be as well to Nigerians like the Vice President who say that she needs to stop demarketing Nigeria? She should focus on her job in the UK and stop speaking ill about Nigeria. Would that be a fair response to the criticism that she has repeatedly shown towards the Nigerian government?
So I think it's important to note that the criticism she's made is not of the current Nigerian government. She's not speaking about the current president or the vice president. She's not speaking about the government as it stands now. But she is talking about the economic conditions in which she grew up. And if we are to be honest with ourselves, as sort of Kemi's main principle is, then when we look back at governments in the 70s or the 80s, we look back at the economic conditions then, and there's been a material deterioration, right? We look back at the exchange rate, and there's been a material deterioration. So when she makes these comments, I think she is talking about what she's seen, what she's grown up with, and I don't think she should be criticized for that.
Well, a lot of, Africans are disappointed with the Conservative frontman, especially her choice of words when it comes to immigration. Many have said that she speaks as if she wasn't from a different country before she decided to, take her stay in the United Kingdom as well. Can you share with us, from a political point of view, what are other politicians saying in regards to her view towards immigration, not allowing other people of other nationality coming to the UK, not making it free and fair, ensuring that tightening, quite similarity with what we're going to talk about later on in the course of the show with Donald Trump's policies and so on. What do you think, what are politicians saying about these suggestions of hers?
So, to be clear, there are two strands to immigration, right? There is legal and there is illegal. And the bulk of her comments have focused on illegal migration. I think it's fair to say the vast majority of people that have come to this country legally accept that there is a difference between the two. And so when you distinguish between legal and illegal immigration, then you get down into the nitty-gritty. I think the focus of her remarks, the point that she's been making, is that it is unfair if people are unable to come to this country legally through legal routes, whether that's visas or through study, but it is unfair if people can't come here legally and then do so illegally. And so I think she's rightly pointed out that there's a difference between legal and illegal migration. But more broadly, the perspective of the both Conservative and Labour parties actually has been that immigration now needs to fall. So you look at the figures for the last full year, according to the Office for National Statistics, you had over 800,000 people come to the UK in that 1 year alone. Both main parties, both Conservative and Labour parties, now agree that that figure is too high. And so, unfortunately, there is no real political space right now in the UK for you to make the argument that migration should be much higher than it currently is, right? Both main parties agree that migration needs to come down, but both main parties also agree on the fairness point. They both agree that it is only fair and right for people to come here legally, and so therefore you have to be tough and take action when people do so illegally.
Yeah, all right. I think final question, is, again, your reaction to, there's a few people who say that she's a sellout, and she's Uncle Ruckus of the United Kingdom. What would your reaction be to that?
Well, I don't think that's the case at all. I think she has spoken honestly from a place of her political convictions. She has set up a good campaign in terms of talking about the truth, and she has started to deliver in office. It's rare that you see a leader in opposition get off to such a good start as she has. She's taken the party from being behind in the polls to being at least neck and neck, and perhaps even slightly ahead. And so what she's saying is clearly resonating with the British public.
Well, in her speech, she also made mention of an error presumably made by the Conservative Party in the aspect of Brexit, net zero, and the likes. Could you shed more light on what this pointers that she made actually means, and how it's also going to affect the Conservative Party, especially on how they view her? Can you shed more light on that?
So the comment that Kemi made regarding Brexit was that the UK should have taken more time to consider the implications of leaving the EU and a strategy for leaving the EU before triggering what was known as Article 50. So Article 50 is the formal process by which a country triggers negotiations to leave the European Union. The UK did so relatively quickly after voting to leave in 2016. But the point that Kemi was making is that the UK should have been slightly slower to do so, and so in doing that would have been able to figure out a more comprehensive strategy, not only for negotiating to leave the EU, but actually for post-Brexit trade deals. I think she made a similar point around net zero, that the UK should have fully considered the implications of what a net zero policy would mean, rather than saying, actually, we'd like to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and then sort of reverse engineering the policy from that. So he was suggesting that there should have been more reflection before these decisions were made, and her approach to these things is sort of in keeping with her pro-honesty approach in general, whereby she says, actually, it is easy to sort of say we've never made a mistake. It's easy to say, everything we did over the last 14 years from 2010 to 2024 that the party was in government, it's easy to say that we were always right, but actually that's not true. And so the point that she's made, the way that she's come across, saying that actually sometimes we have to reflect on the mistakes that we've made and you have to be honest about those, is the sort of first stage of her leadership. First to reflect on the past, and then to diagnose the problems we face currently, and then to move to solutions.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Ogunniyi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We will see how these stories develop, and we'd love to speak with you again.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as we begin a new working week, it is imperative to let you know that the fight against insecurity is a continuous one here in Nigeria. It would equally have to deal with a new sect that engages in international human trafficking uncovered in Kaduna State by the intelligence services. The new sect, which is recruiting members from within and outside Nigeria, is named ACHAD, or ACHAD, like some would love to call it, which is ACHAD Life Mission International. That's what it's called.
Yeah. Now, the leader of the sect has been identified as one Mr. Yokana, who resides in Jos Plateau State, with its headquarters in Kaduna. The Nigerian Immigration Service, NIS, says that the new sect doesn't believe in Islam or Christianity, but preaches the restoration of African traditions and support for humanity. As if that isn't worrying enough, Amnesty International recently stated in a tweet that a mass burial was held for the 147 victims of Boko Haram's horrific Sunday, 12th January slaughter of farmers and fishermen at Dumba, near Baga, Borno State. Nigeria's insecurity seems to be ripe for a state of emergency.
Well, joining us this morning to speak on this is retired DSS Director and Security Expert, Mr. Dennis Amachree joins us. Thank you so much for being here this morning once again. It seems that we're making, progress by saying we're making progress 2 steps forward, but then again, it seems we're going 10 steps back. One, we do have a new sect that seems to be very, very dangerous here. They don't believe in Islam, like we've seen the recent sects. They don't believe in Christianity. Rather, they say they base their belief on African traditions. And I wonder if African tradition allows them to go ahead and engage in human trafficking. Maybe they're going back to the medieval times, maybe during the time of our forefathers. But then again, welcome. We'd like you to share your thoughts on this new sect that has been identified, finding its place once again, not in the southeast or wherever, but focused on the borders of the north.
Good morning. I am very, very worried for one thing, and that is we don't know much about this sect. The ACHAD Life Mission International. Immigration came out to tell the country that this is a new sect and they are involved in human trafficking. And then, of course, that's all. They know the leader who lives in Jos. And then, of course, the headquarters is in Kaduna. And no arrests were made. And that's my problem right there, because when you discover sex like this, you don't just announce it. Why don't investigate it? Why don't see if they are really a bad sect, make arrests, interrogate them, and then tell the country. I don't know the hurry with which the immigration is trying to do this. Because come to think about it, Nigeria is a secular state, and then people have freedom of religion, And although it is not absolute to have, freedom of religion, but at least investigate and know more about it. Now, telling the public about it, what was the gain? What do we know? We're supposed to be aware of them and be, try to hide ourselves or what?
Yeah, I mean, it maybe also just shows the failure in, certain standard operating procedures that, some of these agencies have. But human trafficking, I wasn't expecting to hear that in 2025. I mean, if we, 2024, we heard about the Lakorawa, which was a new terror group in Sokoto and Kebbi. We've heard about Boko Haram, ISWAP, these are all terror groups. So, human trafficking is a new angle entirely. From what you know, how bad is, that particular situation in Nigeria? How much of a transit route is Nigeria for human trafficking? Do we have very scary figures of people who are trafficked from Nigeria to other countries?
Yes. If we have to zero it down to human trafficking, I think Nigeria is a very, very hot spot for human trafficking. In fact, it is not even human trafficking. It descends to human organ trafficking. And of course, we just got a new case some days ago, was it last week or so, where a guy was supposed to have allegedly killed his girlfriend, and then of course cut her to pieces, and then was arrested when he was taking the head to somewhere in a nylon bag. Now, yes, that, 2 aspects to this. One is using people for rituals, and that's where you find a lot of people missing, and then of course being killed and their parts being sold. Besides rituals, some of these parts are also sold, even transported overseas. Kidneys, liver, all kinds of human parts, internal organs that are being sold for heavy sums of money. So those are the two parts, and it is a big problem in Nigeria. I don't think people have even actually looked into it, because I still don't know. I've still not heard of arrests. I've not heard of any prosecution.
But why is that? Why? Because it's a thing that I still want to speak a little bit more on. Why is it that there is whispers that there's a possibility of human part, trafficking or marketing in Nigeria? Some places, some people would even say that there are certain markets, in the Southwest that you can buy human parts, you can buy skulls and different parts. Why are these things happening in whispers? At this point, shouldn't we as a nation, be certain on investigative work that has been carried out, maybe by the DSS, by the police, by whichever other security agency, to bust some of these rings if they truly exist?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent question, and in fact, I hope that the DSS will go into this, because usually when we are talking of national security, we are also talking of the security of the human being in Nigeria. But you are very right. There are human parts markets. For those people who are into traditional medicine and stuff like that, we've lived with this for years, even before independence. During electioneering periods, we have people who go and meet witch doctors, do human sacrifices, bathe in blood, and of course, from what you've been hearing, which I also heard, even in Lagos, there might be some areas in certain markets, where human parts are being sold. And I think the security agents will do very, very well to, point their torchlight into that. I know they are busy with other things, but this is an area that really concerns the dignity and life of the Nigerian citizen.
Let's look at a state of emergency, which a lot of persons have called for. Do you think it's high time that the federal government or this administration calls for a state of emergency on insecurity by taking it headlong, tackling it headlong, and putting the right modalities in place, ensuring that every focus is given so that a lot can be achieved at this point? Because the way in which we're going, we're starting to see splinter groups from pre-existing terrorist groups, and then we're also starting to see new ones rear ugly heads from different parts. We see, like Osarge said, we did see Lakorawa from last year. Now we also have another one, and who says we will not have another one or three more before the year comes to an end? So do you think we should declare, the government should declare a state of emergency at this point?
Well, I think the state of emergency should be declared on all these insurgent groups, the insurgent groups, religious groups. Like I said earlier, Nigeria is a secular state, and religion, freedom of religion is a right. It's a fundamental human rights of Nigerians, but it is not absolute. It's not absolute at all, because when you come to, in fact, what is happening in Nigeria is not even a matter of state of emergency. I think this is a time for us to put some boundaries, some guidelines to religious practice in Nigeria. Because when you look at all the insurgents group, most of them started from religion. The Lakurawas are all religious group. When they first came into Nigeria, they were very, very quiet. and then of course live among the communities, and then suddenly they started brandishing weapons and stuff like that. So I think there should be some kind of regulation where these religious groups should register. In fact, let them register, so that there should be boundaries. Want to even know their tax responsibility. Many of them, religion, churches, mosques, they don't pay taxes. So any Tom, Dick, or Harry can come up tomorrow, put up a canopy, and then start something. And that should be wrong, because I think in other countries there are standard religions that are known by government. It's not anybody that will come and try to bamboozle the citizens of a country, and then of course brainwash them to be doing all kinds, eating grass, doing all kinds of things. In East Africa it's even worse. So I think there should be some kind of regulation, and then make sure that these people don't abuse the human rights of Nigerians.
I mean, but the Nigerian government itself needs to, see the urgency with which it should be taking these things, and I don't know that we're there yet. Even with the repeated shocking stories that we hear, Amnesty International reported about 147 lives that were taken, and buried in Borno State from the attack on the 12th of January. There wasn't any national statement or statement made from the presidency or anything like that. In fact, if Amnesty International didn't even put out that report, many Nigerians wouldn't even know that the numbers were that staggering. And so, I mean, the country itself doesn't seem to, take these things that seriously anymore. Where would you say we are right now, after 15 years of the fight against insurgency? Where would you say we are currently?
I think we're at a point where government need to pay more attention to the humans or to the citizens of this country. We cannot continue like this. The life of a single Nigerian should matter. It should matter, because we cannot reduce it to numbers. In fact, 2 years ago, I remember a situation where, the state government, I think, or the community came out to say that there were about 100 people that were killed, and the police came out and said, no, it is not 100, it is 75, It does not matter whether it is one, lives matters, and we cannot allow people to be, coming out and, killing people anyhow. We cannot reduce it to tribal wars or ethnic fights, and that's why I'm saying that our criminal justice system must brace up. They must brace up, in the sense that if all these killings are happening and people are being arrested and prosecuted and jailed and shamed, I think it will be a form of deterrence.
Yeah, but Mr. Amachree, we've been fighting this fight for 15 years. It's heartbreaking to hear that after 15 years, of battling the insurgency, you can still lose 147 citizens in one day in 2025. 147, and for me, I don't know, if any other person can interpret it different, but it really just says that there's not really so much, success that has been recorded. Yes, every now and then we hear that bandits were attacked by the army, and 12, 40, were killed and whatnot. But does it mean that these bandits are, 200,000, in number, and of course the terror groups as well, because we've been killing them for so long? It doesn't seem to be changing much, with the number of Nigerian lives that are being lost. Bama was it Bama now? So the forward operating base was attacked also a couple of weeks ago. About a couple of soldiers were reportedly killed. So it doesn't sound like we have made that much progress. And it's worrisome for me, and I'm sure for a lot of Nigerians. So what do you think needs to change? Is it funding? Is it the operational processes of, security? Do we need to increase the budget of, for defense every year? What exactly needs to happen for the Tinubu administration to say to itself that by 2027, it was able to secure Nigeria?
Well, that's a $1 million question, and I can tell you that it's a concern for security professionals like myself and others, where we've been fighting this for decades. And when we look at it, it's becoming more complicated than meets the eye of the ordinary person, because why should we continue to fight this war? Why? Abacha said that if there's an insurgency or, and it's not put down in 24 hours, then there must be fifth columnists in that fight. And of course, even when Jonathan was there, he said it, that there must be some people from Boko Haram who are in his government, and then of course we've seen a situation where it's not funding. It's not funding because the military has been given a lot of money. What we need is a judicious usage of that money, because a lot of the money has been stolen. A general has been arrested with millions, and jailed. And the economy, the war economy, so to say, is a very lucrative economy, whereby a lot of people are involved in it.
Yeah, Mr. Amachree, that's very obvious, and it's not, unfortunately, it's lucrative, and it has continued, maybe that's the reason that we've continued to fight this fight, that this never-ending fight. But we have a new administration that should be able to say to itself that this is one of the promises that we've made to Nigerians, and we will fulfill this promise by the time we're leaving office in 2027. And so shouldn't Mr. President be worried that 2 years into his administration, we still lost 147 people? Shouldn't he be summoning the heads of security agencies across the country this morning to ask them what exactly is going on? What do they need? Do they need more money? Do they need more ammunition? Who is maybe misusing these funds? Shouldn't it bother Mr. President and the National Assembly that we lost 147 Nigerians?
Well, that question will go to the president himself, but as a security professional who is observing it or with a bedside view, I would say that, number one, the security agencies, more than before, are doing better now. They are doing better. I think there is some kind of synergy where intelligence is being shared properly. And then, of course, I know that there are new technology that are being deployed. And, of course, you have AI, artificial intelligence, being deployed for the first time in Nigeria during this fight by the DSS. And then, of course, the military itself is now working together, and they're working all under the National Security Advisor. But one thing is that let's not reduce it to the paramedical situation again, because the National Security Advisor is an advisory body. Although it's supposed to be a clearinghouse of intelligence, and it should be an advisory body to the president. The other operational bodies like the Army, Navy, Air Force, DSS, police, are supposed to be reporting directly to the president. But he creates that fusion center where intelligence is being shared among everybody. Because recently I've been seeing situations where there are, there are operational arms or operational departments in the National Security Advisor's Office. And I think we don't want to duplicate or, put things overlapping in the security arena. That brings me to the point where we have to be talking with one voice. The security agencies should be talking in one voice and not discordant voices where the police is doing its own thing, and then of course the other arms are also doing their own thing. So I think there should be some unity of purpose where we get this thing straightened out.
We'll take your word for it. There should be unity of purpose. And hopefully, in that sad event that took place, as reported by Amnesty International, there would be some form of a closure, finding out who these perpetrators were, even though they've been identified as Boko Haram. And hopefully we'll get back to this conversation with glad tidings, finding out that our security operatives have been able to reach a closure on that story. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Dennis Amachree, for taking time to join us this morning. Thanks for being here on Breakfast Central.
Thank you very much for having me.
For your time.
All right. Well, as you know, it's been a very, very deep conversation. I've had some time off over the weekend thinking deeply about what it could mean for the families seeing about 147 bodies lying down, all gone. And the saddest thing about that story is the fact that Amnesty did report that the killers or the perpetrators of this act, otherwise known as Boko Haram, were coming back to pick the bodies. They wanted to take the bodies away with them. What manner of action is that?
Like I said,
you commit a crime. You still came. You wanted to take. So it still lingers to what Mr. Dennis just said. That there's human trafficking. There's also organ trafficking.
Yeah. So whatever Boko Haram chooses to do, I mean, they understand themselves, best, and they are a terror group. They should be treated as such. I'm mostly concerned with the fact that the Nigerian government didn't necessarily seem bothered, at least not in their actions or their statements or their press releases or anything. Welcome back, and now let's take you through the newspapers and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. We're joined by public affairs analyst Abib Aruna. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
All right. We'll kick off with the daily independent newspapers this morning, see what we can find. It says, rising insecurity, reps more targets for IGP service chiefs to check poor performance, want appraisal to form basis of reappointment and disengagement. We can also find here, Serap writes, Trump seeks return of Nigeria's stolen assets and ban on corrupt officials. Don't sacrifice education sector for IMF, ASU tells Tinubu. And also, vandals destroy 18 transmission towers in 5 days. TCN laments. And also, refutes allegations, vows to defend reputation. Which are, well, not very many other major stories. Labour Party crisis, Nanadi Usman-led caretaker committee heads to Supreme Court. Shettima to represent Tinubu at World Economic Forum meeting in Davos. These are the big stories on the Daily Independent newspapers this morning. All right, let's move to This Nigeria newspapers.
Right. Okay, let's look at This Nigeria. This Nigeria on the front page there says, Niger tanker explosion, 80 buried in mass grave, 55 in critical condition as death toll rises to 86. Tinubu can senators mourn, describe tragedy as unfortunate. National Assembly alleges ghost projects in Steel Development Ministry. Interesting. Calls for forensic audit by independent auditors. Over 300 billion naira owed in rights of occupancy in FCT. Wike vows to charge electricity vandals with economic sabotage. Criminals, kidnappers, headsmen disguised as IPOP ESN. Next year report insists most kidnapping incidents carried out by bandits. And that's all we have on the front page of This Nigeria.
And I think we could quickly just throw in the punch this morning. NLC faults fresh petrol price hike, says federal government is insensitive. Labor fears hike would fuel food crisis. Increase in line with rising crude price, says Dangote. Interesting. Very interesting. Also, Labour Party crisis. OT's Ketka panel drags Abure before Supreme Court. Mass deportation fear border closure as Trump returns to White House. Edo Tribunal, police tighten security as violence rises. 89,000 Nigerians denied Schengen visa in 2 years, says the report. And Catholic Church suspends Delta priest over secret U.S. wedding. Of course, Gaza, UN and others cheer as freed Israelis reunite with their families. We probably should start with the petrol price crisis. It seems like there's a scarcity in different parts of Lagos and Nigeria generally. Fears are that the price is, of course, going to increase again. Dangote says market forces.
Well, it should be expected, because since the government says it's not to be driven by market forces, there are nothing the Nigerians can do about it. If the price of oil rises globally, the price of crude rises globally, there's no way to now affect us here locally. So what we are saying is, Dangote, who owns the biggest refinery in Nigeria, is importing crude to refine, buying crude at what price? And so there's no way Dangote will bring his fuel to Nigeria, sell his fuel to Nigeria at a cheaper price. Yeah. And that is why you see, Dangote is a businessman. I don't problem with that. But I'm not happy going by the precedents and antecedents of Dangote as a monopolist. I won't be comfortable if Dangote is the one controlling the price of fuel in Nigeria. I'll be comfortable. Even though Dangote said yesterday that according to these fuel stations, MRS and Hidden, will be selling at $9.75. That's what he said. But it's not confirmed yet that what they are doing. So the government needs to be more proactive, more imaginative, so that they will provide more crude to Dangote to reduce the price. You see, most Nigerians were thinking that when Dangote come into operation, that would be Uhuru.
No, they weren't thinking that. They were told that. The Nigerian government.
That was the thinking. But Dangote is now telling us that, my friend, I'm buying my crude from all over the world. And if the price is increasing, I cannot come here and be telling to you at a cheaper rate. So I will increase my own. And once Dangote is increasing his own, NNBC and other marketers will increase their own too. So Nigerians are the one at the receiving end. So it's not, I don't think it's a palatable news. If NNBC may be crying, but the fact remains that the market forces will determine the price. Yeah. And government has a duty to protect the common man. That's the angle I'm looking at. And as I said, I'm not comfortable. Going by the experience of Dangote sugar, cement, to now be fixing the price of fuel. We've been a mess. Yeah.
Will any of that change if Port Harcourt and Warri refinery truly
they don't have the capacity? And we're talking about 650,000 barrels per day. It's the biggest in Africa, if not in the third world. So Dangote will continue to dictate the price. The government is not responsible to sit down and think of how do we counter this. How does it better the lives of Nigerians, other Nigerians than go to buy fuel at the fuel station? Let's give a benefit of the doubt that Hayden and MRS will sell at a cheaper rate. But from what I'm saying, queues are beginning to surface in most stations across Lagos. I don't know if anywhere about the country. So I'm not comfortable with what is going on.
All right. Anyway, let's go to Daily Independent. Let's look at this particular story. Vandals destroy 18 transmission towers in 5 days. TCN laments. There's been a constant statement put out there by TCN, not forgetting to. The Minister of Power had said so, that they're highly affected by vandals who destroy both transmission towers and so on, impacting heavily on electricity. What's your take?
But for how long are we going to be at the mercy of these vandals? Consistently, there have been the news, vandals destroying cables, vandals destroying electricity. The activities is affecting power supply in the country. For how long? I was thinking that TCN will be, we have a in collaboration with security operatives, security agencies to secure these states, to protect them. And these are government assets. What are they doing about it? They're always lamenting, you know. I was thinking that by now there will be concrete steps taken by both TCN and the federal government. Where is the National Security Advisor on this matter? Why are we continuing to be the other one? The other time they said that there was no collapse of the national grid, and there was problem, and the TCN was having problem with vendors. So I don't think this is tenable. Are we saying that non-state actors are more powerful than government? I think more should be done by both the TCN and the security agencies to protect these national assets. It's not acceptable to me. Stop lamenting. What are they doing? What are they doing about it? And what is the federal government doing? What are the security agencies doing about it to protect the national assets? Because you know, as well as we have this disruption by vendors, it affects ultimately power supply. So what are they doing about it? What is the concrete thing doing about it? You should be asking these questions. And Nigeria should demand that they should come out and address us, what they are doing about it, concrete things they are doing about it, to protect national assets. This frequent disruption by vendors.
And it's not the first time that this is happening.
All the time. They should keep on. I don't like this lamentation. You know, there should be a way of securing it.
All right. This Nigerian newspapers this morning.
We're not discussing this petrol something.
You're going there.
We're going there. Niger tanker explosion, 80 buried in mass grave, 55 in critical condition as death toll rises to 86. Tinubu, Khan, and senators mourn describe tragedy as unfortunate.
Very, very sad again. You know, it's a sad commentary. What we saw on Saturday was a sad scenario. A combination of poverty and ignorance. It will keep on happening. It will continue to happen. You know, when the thing happened, when the truck fell down, where were security operatives? Where were the police? I was thinking that based on the experience we had in Jigawa, the police should be everywhere, trying to ward off people from going near the scene. But the police were nowhere, or the police were overwhelmed. So people went there ignorantly that this thing might explode. They went there scrubbing fuel on the ground, and all of a sudden, it exploded. When I saw the video yesterday, I felt very bad. Then the government will come to tell you the issue statement. With the state government, the police, and emergency officials are nonsense. For how long? And that will be the story. That will be most global network will pick it. You know, because in journalism, when it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
Bad news is good. It's good news in the media. So we have lost more than 200 people in the past 1 year to this tanker explosion. Why must we? You cannot do bring people that are very poor. They want to go and tap from it. How do you educate them that don't go there? It's deadly. It's something that is a very dangerous thing.
Do you think, I mean, the president has commissioned a team to look into it because it's happening rather too much. We saw, like I mentioned earlier on, we did see what took place in Delta State in Agbo, and now we're seeing another one. And like we also said in the morning,
look at the one in Jigawa.
Jigawa as well.
Just a few weeks ago.
Just a few weeks ago. And like we said, if you give Nigerians the opportunity, if a tanker should fall not far off from where our station is, Nigerians will still go there.
They will still go there.
So do you think it's a case of orientation? I mean, I remember back, permit me to say, in your heydays, back then, I mean, we were way, way younger. We used to hear adverts on radio where they were done via announcements on Radio 1 and so on. This is a public announcement. Nigerians, if you see this, avoid. It was some form of orientation. Do you think we've lacked that in years? Because the agencies are no longer doing public service announcements, apart from the National Television Authority, NTA, where I see it. I mean, we're News Central, we're here. I think this should be spread across all media platforms. Orientation, don't you think it's key?
We are raising a very congent issue. During the last DPECU, in Jigawa, I said on the national radio, on the national TV, that what is the National Orientation Agency doing? There is poverty in the land, which makes that kind of thing attractive to people that are not reasonable. But the government has a duty. Let them know the danger of going near any falling tanker. You know, I think I agree with you. God is about education. Because poverty is there. So one will be jeered towards doing something stupid. But at the same time, if there is enough and robust orientation, education, people will be mindful, you know, of getting near that kind of thing in the future. So the government can do more rather than coming out after any incident, after any tragedy. We need to see the video yesterday.
I think I'm going to stick with the very first point that you made, which is, and you know, I made this point earlier, that it is a clear sign of also our institutional and systemic failure as a country.
Yeah, correct.
Because yes, people would be silly. It's human nature every now and then that you see people take very, very, you know, certain risks. Poverty in Nigeria is at that level where people would say, okay, even if this is the only source of a meal that we would have for the next couple of days, let's go and grab the oil and sell it.
Let's take that risk.
It's on that level. But the institutional failure in Nigeria is what has made a situation like that to occur. You do not have 5 police vehicles present to cordon the area and ensure that nobody comes close to it. It's the same reason that you do not have police vehicles available and then a fire truck immediately 5 minutes away to ensure that immediately this, you know, disaster happens, there's a fire truck present there in 5, 7, 10 minutes max. It's institutional failure. And so I feel like the Nigerian, and unfortunately, when these things happen, because there's no punishment for the failure that we're talking about here, we would not see an improvement in the processes or in the policies. We're not going to see that because of what has happened in Niger State now, there will be better funding for police and fire service. Well, no, it's not going to happen. You know, so the president is going to set up his committee. The committee is going to ask a couple of questions. In a couple of days, committee would wrap up its work and go home. But we would never improve on our processes and the standards of, you know, with which we do things, because the government in Niger State is not going to be punished for its failure
at all. It's not about the government of Niger State. It's about the tanker driver. It's about the company that sent the driver to deliver fuel somewhere. So it's about the police. That there was a DPO in that vicinity. Do we have an effective and efficient fire service in that locality? So you are saying what you are saying is very apt and destructive. You know, the government has a responsibility of making sure that citizens are safe. The government is not doing that. So how can we be having incessant killing of innocent people? You know, it's a twin thing: ignorance and poverty. And the root cause of it is poverty, my brother. It's poverty.
Not just poverty in terms of hunger, but also poverty in terms of the mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. You see many big men going around with policemen. We don't have enough police to secure the country, to make sure that people are doing the right thing. As this thing happened, police should condemn the area. This thing will not happen. I was even told that police were among the people that died.
Yeah. I mean, that's another inside story.
You know, so we need to be very careful. The scenario, the picture you just painted. I mean, I love it. But I wish that it will not happen again next time.
Well,
so
we spoke about Jigawa. You know,
both issue orientation is very, very key. There's local radio in dialects.
Local radio in dialects. In
don't go there.
In the northern dialect.
Yes.
Use that.
Tell them not to go near there. If you happen to date, they will still go there and score for
Of course.
You know. So and I think the core thing, the structural, is an issue of poverty. Behavioral, people can be very stupid, but structural is poverty. Like, this should be done to improve people's welfare in the country.
I can tell you that if they throw a squid game out there and they put fuel tank and Nigerians have to cross to park, a lot of Nigerians would attempt that game because they will be looking, they believe that they would scoop the fuel and they would escape. I don't know how that is done. Let's take one last story very quickly as we look set to wrap things up here. I think, Osage, you wanted to take another one? Glennie?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to chip in the Labour Party crisis as Nana Usman and the rest head to Supreme Court. Yeah, but also, if you could also chip in your thoughts. Surprisingly, didn't make the headlines this morning, the EFCC story from over the weekend. Joi, I don't know if you were following the story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The EFCC went to arrest someone. And those guys came out with guns and attacked the officials, killing one of the officials in the process. That is taking it in a new dimension, you know, insofar as I want the EFCC to be more civil in their approach in tackling this issue of corruption. They should be more civil. The way they and manner they arrest these people is not in any way in conformity to the normal convention. You know, go there, arrest you. You can go to nightclub, you go to lounge, you know, maltreat you anyhow. So these people also are finding a way to protect themselves, you know. But I think it's dangerous. It should be condemned by all Nigerians. And it's also good to say that they should now be more prepared. They're going to confront these fraudsters. You know, these people are becoming very armed.
Yeah, but I don't think we have confirmed 100% that this person was an internet fraudster. You know, it's what the EFCC's claim is. You know, he will have his day in court. You know,
but the official died. The official died, so we have to give the EFCC the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, the official died.
Absolutely.
You know, but I think what many Nigerians are reacting to, first of all, the things that you pointed out, which is the processes have made a lot of Nigerians lose faith and trust in the EFCC.
Yeah.
And so you don't even see a lot of people sympathizing with the EFCC about this case.
No,
and also with the fact that, you know, the EFCC's chairman, Ola Olukoye, they had banned night raids, you know, in 2023, November 2023. And this, you know, case happened at night, 3, 4 a.m. So if you are, you know, you are asleep at 3 a.m.
You can't go to my house and arrest me by midnight.
You can imagine. And so
I won't go to anywhere.
As much as it's easy to simply say, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing the Nigerian police were doing then. Anybody who has dreads is a fraudster, and that's what they do, brutalize you, throw you into their truck, and then when you get to the station, explain yourself, collect money from you somehow, some way. And, you know, we started criminalizing looking a certain way or driving certain cars, you know, by simply just calling them fraudsters. So it's I don't know, well, the EFCC will need to also follow through with
of course.
Prove that this person was actually
must prove it.
And all of that. The gun, the presence of a gun, whether it's licensed or unlicensed, that's left for him to deal with, you know, when he gets to court. But the point is, the EFCC has failed to take any responsibility for a failure of its processes that led to this officer's death.
You know, they have to defend it and prove to Nigerians what truly took place and what happened. Because it's unjustifiable to go to a man's house midnight around 3 o'clock, 3 a.m. in the morning to try to arrest him. I don't think any society will allow that. But at the same time, everything should be commended, you know, for doing their job as enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria. Someone died, person died. So the justice should be paid, and that should be appreciated. You know, there was a time my son, a lawyer, and his friends were going to play ball at the island. They were inside the Zanuba, and a policeman came to them that one of the guys was having a deadlock. He said he should come down. And my son was laughing. If you should come down and do what? You're not coming down. You can't force us to come down. So the Uber driver was not telling the policeman that. They're talking to a lawyer because they are young boys. Oh, the policeman said, sorry, I'm sorry. And he left them. So that's the kind of mentality that these security operatives have. When they see you, they're not. There was an official at the U.S. Embassy when I was going there in 2001, 2002. The man had dreadlocks. And that was the consular general. Yes, he had dreadlocks. So what are we talking? So these people need to be oriented. They need to be educated to know that your appearance does not connote what they may have in mind.
We have a lot.
And then on the labor matter, it is unfortunate. Because me for one, as a political writer, I believe that there is there's a third hand in this crisis in labor between Abure, Obi, and other officials of the party. And I don't know what Abure is fighting for. If you cannot play Hamlet without the press, Obi is the symbol of that party. You cannot dislodge Obi from Labour. I want Nigeria to support it. The symbol of that party is Peter Obi. And that was why they did very well in the last election. And you know the natural character of Nigerian politics. They want to destroy it before the next election. So I see Abure playing the role of a Judas. And I don't trust that man, Abenicio. Just like what is happening in PDP, something is replicating itself in Labour Party. It's not a natural thing. Is it frustration everywhere? That's the problem we have in Nigerians. They cannot keep. They cannot. How do I even describe it? They cannot be consistent. Yeah. You know, to make sure that success is protected. You know, so it's good for them to go to the Supreme Court. Let the court decide. Maybe eventually there will be peace and stability in the Labour Party.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vivarona, for always being here, especially on the Monday morning. Very interesting insight into some of the major stories making headlines.
You know, we will not discuss the Trump matter. The Trump.
We will have you come back for that. I'm sure we'll have you come back this week because we want to look at different aspects of that. And besides, we also have a guest who's joining us, and she's waiting. She'll be joining us on the Trump issue because she's been following it closely. Hopefully, she'll also be at the inauguration. Maybe she'll give us more insights into that. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Sir. Thank you on the morning.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at which way Nigeria and then segue into the inauguration of United States 47th President Donald J. Trump. Stay with us.
In analyzing the very recent shocking events of gruesome killings allegedly for money rituals, there are a few things that I believe are important to note. The first is that I believe that we are failing ourselves as a society if we don't call ourselves together and ask, what is truly going on? Are these incidents truly happening for money ritual purposes? Is there maybe a thriving but unspoken body part or organ harvesting market in Nigeria? Or is there a thriving cannibalism culture in Nigeria that, is really just unspoken of? It exists, but nobody really is saying anything about it. Those questions require urgent answers because we have seen one beheading too many. Now, if truly these are money ritual driven, then certain things must also then be pointed out. And one of them is that our very unhealthy obsession with quick wealth, driven by very many factors, which include religion in Nigeria, the prosperity preachers and the prosperity pastors who make you believe that being poor is ungodly and have you believe that there is some spiritual pathway that brings massive blessings in the form of wealth. It is that same belief in spiritual sourced wealth that drives belief in money rituals. While one of them is condemned as barbaric and illegal, the other one is celebrated, normalized. Even though both of them thrive on the same desperation and superstition and the promise of quick wealth. The idea that some spiritual being will pour financial blessings upon you if you take certain steps. These actions are guided by the same principles, similar beliefs. For many, the belief in supernatural, the supernatural rather, remains a default explanation for wealth or success. And the unhealthy obsession with religion and money in Nigeria is actually driving us nuts. I should also add that these stories also just tell you that Nigeria and the Nigerian frame of mind hasn't really changed much since the early 90s. If you remember in the days of Nollywood movies like Living in Bondage or Blood Money, as far back as 1992 or 1997, those movies told stories of money rituals that were possibly happening in that time in Nigeria. And so if in 2025, we still hear such stories, the fact that many people still believe in money rituals as a means to wealth, it suggests that since the early 90s, scientific reasoning and skepticism have not really permeated society deeply enough, at least the Nigerian society. We pretty much still have the same way of thinking passed across generations. In big 2025, when nations and citizens of other countries are making giant strides in healthcare and information technology and research, the giant of Africa still has people who believe that some native doctor has the key to giving you billions of naira if you simply bring human parts. It's painful, but again, we must interrogate these issues and know exactly what we are dealing with? Are these incidents truly happening for money ritual purposes, or is there maybe a thriving but silent body part or organ harvesting market in Nigeria? Good morning, Nigerians.
Thought-provoking one there. Well, let's go straight to the United States of America. Donald Trump's forthcoming presidency will commence with his swearing-in ceremony on Monday. He intends to issue multiple executive orders as well as address the American people. Now, there is an itinerary of what the president would be doing ahead of a very busy schedule and a very busy day, especially looking at the fact that the inauguration would be one that is witnessed and watched globally by not just Americans, but of course Nigerians, Ghanaians, Indians, you name it whatsoever. We do have a guest who's joining us now. Her name simply is one that truly, represents what many of us call for in the morning. Joy is coming. Anyway, Joy joins us this morning all the way from the United States. Thank you so much, Joi John, for being here this morning. You've been following the inauguration very closely, and due to the time that we have limited, we want to really touch base on this particular special occasion. Can you tell us what the feeling is like being an American, or the Americans, how they're feeling ahead of the grand, very, very special event?
Thanks, Joe. Thank you for having me. Well, it's divided. Just as any election, any part of the world, if your party wins, you're happy, and if your party loses out, it's a different setting for the Democrats. So it's really a divided feeling today.
I mean, divided, why exactly? I remember in the build-up to the elections, there was, many people who, I did speak about this before, that the current president-elect was painted as, the new Hitler, and he was coming to destroy democracy and whatnot. And so, there's still those concerns. Do people still have those fears that Donald Trump, once he gets in, is going to be the new Hitler and is going to destroy the American democracy and is going to jail all his, political enemies and whatnot?
Well, one thing you can't deny is that Trump has a large following. He has a cult following. And regardless of people's perception about his person, he does have a following that believe that he is in office to fight the establishment. So it really doesn't matter what people perceive of him. It's going to be up to his team and the administration to show America what he has to offer.
All right, let's focus on some of the policies. I'd like to take on the border closure. We've seen a lot of persons already apprehensive and worried about what would come out of the situation of things when Trump decides to enact or put into law some of the statements he's made. He's talked about Buy America, America for Americans, border closure, jobs should actually go to the Americans. How are people reacting to this?
The issue of border closure has been widely debated. While securing the borders and prioritizing American jobs are considered important, I believe that there's always a balance to strike. Many industries in the United States rely on immigrant labor, and I'm talking healthcare, hospitality, agriculture, to construction. So it's important that whatever policies are being implemented by the Trump administration must consider the broader economic impact, including African professionals seeking opportunities here in the United States.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons that Nigerians also worry, that once Donald Trump comes in, there's a possibility that it's going to restrict a lot of Nigerians being able to visit the United States or even move to the United States. Do they have, legitimate reasons to have those fears?
I believe so. But then the healthcare sector, for instance, is one that constantly needs skilled workers. So I don't know how that would affect that sector. We're looking at also tech as well. I believe so. There's concern in every quarter.
Okay. I mean, you talked about tech, you talked about the medical sector. We do know that Nigerians are doing very wonderful things in these sectors. But let's also look at a very popular
Amazingly
one.
well, yes.
Yeah, let's look at a popular one that just happened a fortnight, a few hours back. TikTok. The ban on TikTok, and then all of a sudden Trump comes in, offers them, a helping hand, says he's going to extend it for a number of days. There are rumors that he's going to seek for a percentage on TikTok. Can you shed more light if you've heard anything on that?
Absolutely. President Trump has long expressed concerns over national security regarding TikTok, and his stance on ownership reflects that. Now, it's not a personal arrangement with TikTok, of course, but Trump would like the United States to have a 50% ownership position in a joint venture, and his executive order will protect from liability any company or companies that helped keep TikTok accessible before the order is issued. So from what we've seen in the last 24 hours, the extension is reassuring for one, but it also suggests ongoing negotiations. And it's also very clear that the Trump administration wants a greater control over data security.
Yeah, I mean, well, data security, there's many people who also do not agree with the reasons behind this whole TikTok, controversy, as being a data security challenge. But, I also want, to speak on the, once again, re-election of, Donald Trump. The Democrats had 4 years, and then they had President Obama, and then, of course, Trump came in. What does this really signify with regards to the Democratic Party in the United States? Is there a sense that Americans, to a large extent, are tired of the stereotype American politics and, the way of governance that, they basically have had to deal with, since the Obama era?
Yes, elections are won by numbers. Politics itself is a game of numbers. And when you look at the numbers from this election, Trump had an impressive run. He won all 7 swing states. The numbers are clear. He broke grounds. He made history for the Republican Party. So that really tells you where there is a problem. The numbers were different in 2020 with Joe Biden. With the results for 2020, they were different and they were clear, even though he contested that. But with this election, it's really hard to contest. So people are, we've had more people who voted for a different party tilting towards a Republican in this election, and that shows where their mindset is.
Let's talk about the preparation for the all-important event. Can you shed more light what have been put in place and what the world is about to see in terms of spectacle? We do understand that there's a downplay in terms of the celebration due to the weather conditions. So he's going to be sworn, inside. Can you share with us what has been put in place ahead of the all-important event?
Absolutely. So the election, Trump will, his Vice President J.D. Vance will be sworn in at 11:50, I believe 11:59 a.m. and Trump at 12 noon or thereabout. And once that happens, it's going to be in the Capitol Rotunda. And of course, due to the weather, it's really cold. It started snowing here in Washington yesterday, and it's freezing cold. So the crowd that we were anticipating, or the crowd in D.C., will not have access to the grounds as in previous traditions. This is the second time in U.S. history that we are having to move the inauguration inside. The first being the second inauguration for Ronald Reagan 40 years ago. So it's totally different. And yes, it's being downplayed. There will be about it's a smaller audience in the Capitol Rotunda, but then there is also a viewing for his supporters who would want to watch the ceremony, but it's lesser.
All right. Well,
and I believe that 220,000 tickets were given for this inauguration, but they wouldn't have the capacity to hold that number.
We'll see. I mean, it's the birth of the start of another 4-year run for President Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. We wish America the absolute best, and of course, we hope that whatever policies that are put in place do not negatively affect Nigerians, because there's a lot of concerns on this side. But thank you very much, Joi John, for joining us this morning. I hope that you enjoy Inauguration Day, and we'll speak with you again pretty soon.
Absolutely, and I think
Absolutely.
I think we should
Thank
have
you for
Joy.
having me.
I think we should have Joy tomorrow. So hopefully you would stay awake and cover the entire event and come back here tomorrow and shed more light on what went down. I hope you're up for that.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. Bye-bye now.
All right, then. So it's been a fantastic 2 hours conversation. Osalge, it's going to be like, would I say the World Cup of politics? That's how someone put it, you know.
Inauguration Day?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just too many things, that I feel, it should be pointed out with, once again, his re-election, his, return to the White House, and, what that really tells you about how Americans feel about the Democratic Party in the last 4 years. And a lot of people are tired of it, even with the TikTok controversy now. Yeah. I'm hoping that many people are learning, the way that these things work, and there's many people who do not agree that this is a data security, matter, or China is trying to steal out. It's definitely not that. But anyway, we'll see. Happy Inauguration Day to the United States and to, of course, Americans. We will be back here again tomorrow morning to share with you more top stories on Breakfast Central. I am Osalgie Ogbawa.
And I'm Joe Hansen, thanking you for joining us. Join us again tomorrow, and let's keep the conversations going online. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.